Hello and welcome to Revolutionize Your Relationship. I am your host, Eva Blake. And in this series, I'm talking to a variety of experts who are uniquely qualified to educate and empower you to master your mind and body intimacy, to unleash your passion and to create everything that you desire in your life and in your love, because you are absolutely worth it. And today I am thrilled to introduce you to Alexandra Stockwell, known as the Intimacy Doctor. For over 20 years, Alexandra has shown men and women how to bring pleasure and purpose into all aspects of their life, from the daily grind of running a household to clear and intimate communication and to creating ecstatic experiences in the bedroom. And she is the best-selling author of Uncompromising Intimacy and host of the highly acclaimed The Marriage Podcast. So welcome to Alexandra.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. And I just love how you say what this summit is all about. It is so ensouled and grounded and expansive. It feels wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to start with what got you started, right? You were a medical doctor at one point. So what made you shift from working in hard medicine into the squishy space of sex and relationships?
Well, I am trained as a family medicine doctor and I practiced for a while. I'll add that I met my husband in medical school. We've now been married for 25 years and we have 4 children. But I want to take you to when I was in my mid 30s, living north of Boston. I had my own small holistic medical practice and married to the man I love. We had 3 of our 4 children at the time. I'd paid my medical school loans, and I had worked really hard to get there. I had worked hard in college, in medical school, in my training. I had worked hard with having a child, my 3rd year of medical school, one before my internship. So babies, diapers, exams, and long clinical hours had filled my life in order to get to meet my goals of being in a solid marriage and living a good life and practicing medicine and serving people in this way. And so, having worked very hard to get there, I thought I would feel just magnificent once I arrived.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't unhappy. It was more at the level of a whisper where I just thought, I've invested 15 years to get here. I mean, it could be a lot worse, but this is not what I expected. And so I really had to dig deep and ultimately went on sabbatical for a year.
Mhm.
And the main thing that I did was give myself permission to do what I felt like doing
Yeah.
without any particular goal of developing my character, learning a new skill, contributing to others' well-beings. I mean, any of the motivations, all of which are good motivations, but
Mhm.
I gave myself space to pursue things just because I wanted to,
Wow. What a blessing.
right?
What a
Any
blessing.
super competent woman knows what I'm talking about. This sounds so minor unless you are a high achieving professional woman, and then
Yeah.
there's nothing minor at all about what I'm saying. It's actually very radical. So I took a painting class, not because of anything, but I felt like it. And in the course of doing this, I did some things which turned out to be productive and some which were kind of experiments in following my nose. And ultimately, I got to where I really wanted more juiciness, more presence, more sensuality, more erotic bliss in my own marriage. And I have to say, it's not that our sex was ever bad, but the poets describe something where it's not just that you have sex, it's that as a result of both anticipating, experiencing, and afterwards, the sex creates more connection.
Yeah.
That our hearts are opened through having sex. And I was not having that kind of sex. I think I thought we would have once we had time, but our whole relationship, the first 12, 15 years were created while working hard, changing diapers. Like there just wasn't time. Sleep was at a premium.
So in this moment of time, like go back to, when you're like, okay, I'm on sabbatical and I realize, wow, I want the lovemaking that the poets are describing, right? You have how many kids?
At the time I had 3, but we need to slow it down a little bit because it's not that I went on sabbatical and then this desire and need and understanding arose. That is a much more kind of circuitous and unpredictable evolution to go from a very ambitious focus. And I didn't lose any of my ambition. I added whimsy and kind of delight to my priorities. And so really, I explored a lot of different things. And it was only a few years into this that I was ready to dive into my sensuality. I started, I think during this sabbatical time, I bought lip gloss for the first time.
Radical.
Yeah, right? Just for fun.
Yeah.
Just for fun. So I just want to be clear that it wasn't that transformation happens in various ways. Sometimes, mostly with a crisis, it can be very sudden. It's rare that moving from mediocre to magnificent happens with the flip of a switch.
Right.
It's much more of an unfolding evolution, which was definitely my case. And at each phase, it took courage to open more because I was already more open than I had been before.
Yeah.
So did I address your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what I'm really curious about, right, because you work with couples who've been in a long-term relationship, and you've said that you want to change the cultural narrative of long-term relationships. Right?
Yes, I do. I think it is so necessary.
Right. And so, we talked about this previously, and after we did, I was just kind of sitting back and thinking, like, there would be no way for me to count the number of times, like, I've heard about the joke in media, or I've heard from other couples. We got married. It was really great in the beginning. We've been married for 10 or 15 years, and now we only have sex twice a year, right? And so there's a really big change from where things started to where they are when somebody says, hey, something's got to change. And so, as you're telling the story, what's coming up for me, my curiosity is, so what was it like for your husband? Right? Was he like, I'm happy with where things are? Or was he like, yeah, I'm into poetry. Let's create poetry together.
Not into poetry. He had majored in neuroscience at Harvard and studied calculus and comparative zoology. And no.
Yeah.
That was not the case. In fact, okay, we'll go there. So when we got together, I was more expressed. And I remember we went to this yard sale in upstate rural New York and found these incredible dishes. There were 4 dishes. I don't know if they were Limoges or what they were, but they were a very high quality china, and they were so pretty. And we bought them for $0.25 each and got in the car. And I just said, I love these dishes. These are amazing. Aren't they beautiful? And he didn't say anything. He was just driving. And so what did I do? Like, this is a dynamic that happened repeatedly, but anyway, I'm telling it in this context.
Yeah.
So I dialed it up. I got more expressed. It was like if someone doesn't understand and you talk louder, which really
right. Turn up the volume, right?
Yeah. Turn up the volume, turned up the emotional expressiveness. Like, oh, I need to convey this better so he will respond. So after the third time, I said, what? And he said, "You're so loud. I don't even know how I feel about these." And that was a defining moment for me. I mean, on many, but that's one that's memorable. And I really dialed way down. And I think that this is very much a part of the evolution that you described, the typical thing. The only thing I would adjust actually from how you described it is if you've had fantastic sex and just juiciness and then it tapers off, then you want to reignite it. There are many couples who don't have it, who can build it really for the first time. So I just want to presence that. But so asking where was he, it's a super important question, mostly because first of all, the easiest thing to do is complain. And one thing I learned, first conceptually and then over and over until now, it's second nature, but that also was not a quick thing, that in every complaint, there's a desire. And so even though my husband loved me, he certainly would be happy to have more pleasure. He was happy to have me have more pleasure. Anything that I said about what didn't work for me, basically he responded by feeling defensive and shutting down. And so I had a long phase of not bringing anything up because it didn't do me any favors. It just was like 0 steps forward, 2 steps backwards.
Yeah.
And that's painful and that's lonely.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about the solution and how to transform this. But I lived many years of like, first it took admitting to myself. That took a while, and it took a lot of courage to feel love and a beautiful family. Like we never argued about finances and any kind of parenting things we navigated. We had a lot of harmony in our relationship. And yet I felt lonely. And I had one phase where I actually wondered if I was a lesbian, which it would be no problem if I were, but I just, like, that was a way that I could make sense of how lonely I felt and how satisfying my relationship, my marriage was in all these areas, except the most intimate one.
Yeah.
So no, he was not tracking with me. He was on his own journey, but more of a spiritual journey than a sensual journey, I'll just say.
Yeah. How did you make it to this place now where you're serving other couples in this arena to create passion, to get out of that cultural narrative where there's a kind of bringing the temperature down in the sensuality and the sexuality? Like, how are you able to raise the temperature?
I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to first say that I'm 53 years old now.
Yeah.
He will be in September. I'm overweight. I don't know how clearly you can see it, but I am overweight. And we have extraordinary sex.
Beautiful.
And yes, I love all aspects of my life, but the part which is tender and cracks me open in the best ways is the time that I have with him. So I'm going to answer your question, but I really want to say that. And I also want to emphasize that having a fantastic relationship is a learnable skill. And so you're asking me, okay, so what did I learn? And I'm going to answer, but it is a learnable skill. And when it comes to all kinds of other skills, we know you can learn how to be a better basketball player, how you can learn to cook better, like how you can project manage better, whatever it is. There's so many areas of life where we fully expect that there's a learning curve. And I think it is so important to remember that is also true in the realm of relationships. And the point is to get some education from someone who can share it as you
Yeah.
can and I can. So
Yeah.
the first thing, in terms of how we created it, when I'm talking to couples, I usually start with the importance of curiosity, because the feeling of being in love includes curiosity. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's your favorite vegetable? And
Yeah.
who was your second grade teacher? And what did you want to be when you grow up? And when
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
first took this job, did you think it would be like this? Like, there is an insatiable curiosity, which is
Mm-hmm.
part and parcel of the experience of being in love. And there is something wonderful in a long-term relationship about the safety and the companionship and the familiarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the easiest things to see is that the curiosity drops in the same relationship with the passion. So that's one thing. And just starting to ask questions that you're genuinely interested to hear the answer. They can be deep, they can be sexual, they can be playful. That brings a little more energy into the relationship, and it's significant. But the thing that really turned things around for us was vulnerability.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Well,
Like what exactly were, I mean, if you went from I'm expressed at the beginning of your relationship and you're, it sounds like in some ways you're leading in the relationship in this way, right? What were you getting vulnerable about? What was he getting vulnerable about? Because I know that when I talk to clients or when I just even am talking to anybody, lots of people perceive vulnerability to be big, scary, risky, there's this tension, there's this play, there's this like, I want to go forward. And I, like you said, 0 steps forward, 2 steps back.
the essential thing with vulnerability is if you're blaming someone for something, that is not vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So vulnerability is the beautiful, yeah, sometimes scary quality that is kind of the reward or the harvest of taking responsibility for one's own experience. So I think a more accurate way to say it is that I got clear on my experience. I did the work to shed the resentment, because even if he showed up completely differently, I wasn't prepared to receive that if I was resentful for what hadn't been happening in the past. So there is a great deal of personal growth work around believing I'm worthy, around my experience mattering.
Yeah.
These are things that arose for me about not blaming him, about not being emotionally immature in the sense of looking to be rescued. A really big one for me also was needing to get over thinking how I felt and what would really be beautiful for me was obvious. And it was very uncomfortable to have to actually use words and in that way become emotionally responsible and emotionally mature. And so on top of emotional maturity and emotional responsibility and self-awareness, then I add vulnerability. And it means that a communication which could be a complaint or an attack or pouring acid on him, anger, fear, accusation, all of these kinds of things that create something that leads to disconnection. Instead, I can communicate the same essential thing in a way that I am revealing who I am and what my experience is. Now, when I began doing this, I never would have said this, but right now I think of it as a very similar gesture to opening my legs, like, and allowing within my body something to happen that I I reveal who I am so that he has a chance of seeing me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful.
And I think the initial vulnerability is the most challenging because I slowly learned to reveal and I didn't necessarily feel seen. He needed to grow his skills and be on his own journey. So that's the part that is trickiest.
Mm-hmm.
But now vulnerability is really mostly beautiful, even when it's edgy, because together we've both created a culture in our marriage where he does know how to meet and see me. It sometimes takes my breath away how seen I am.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love the pieces that you're talking about being responsible for one's own experience, right? The space of, I know what I feel, my emotions, I know what I'm thinking, I know what my desires are, I know what it feels like to actually be in this meat sack that I'm in, what the sensations that are happening, right? Because then those are all the things that we can communicate, without having to be attached, right? Or without having to need somebody to do something different, right? That's one of the things that I really find is that when we're in this place of being fully responsible, then yeah, it's like, this is who I am. Would you like to come and play? Right? Because I'm owning my space. I'm owning where I'm at. Right. So I love that that's your, revealing yourself.
Yeah, and I think of this as the transition from codependence to interdependence.
Absolutely. 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 Now, you had mentioned something in a previous conversation about a relationship vision. And, I've been playing with this idea about a 10-10 relationship, a 10 out of 10, right? What does it look like to have a 10 out of 10 relationship? And, it's different now than it was 5 years ago. And I'm also a big believer that everything begins and ends with vision, right? It's like, it's a compass for where we're going. If we go this way, it helps us course correct and get back. So how do you help couples, or what can support couples to develop a relationship vision so that they're actually on the same page and that they're moving together in the direction that they agree to?
Yeah, so beautiful. I love that. Any business, any successful enterprise is going to have a vision statement, which is the guiding principle for people with different levels of responsibility, different orientations in order to come together. And when marriage was a political arrangement or a financial arrangement, then that essentially functioned as the vision. Mm-hmm. But now, where we can create interdependence and intimacy of all flavors, then a vision statement is so important to create a collaborative culture within the marriage or within the committed relationship. And when I'm coaching couples, that is not actually where we start, even though it is so fundamental. Yeah. Because in order to create the best vision, you need to clear the resentment and also learn to be able to say what you want without cutting off the corners so that your partner's not uncomfortable or not bringing it up or bringing it up 82% instead of 100%, because you cannot create a 10 out of 10 relationship unless both people are being honest. So that really is the first thing. And then when it comes to creating the vision, what I typically recommend is that each person creates the vision separately. And when doing so, like if you're listening and you'd like to adopt this, it's all in positive statements in the present tense. So we make financial decisions together. Yeah. We talk through any parenting challenges and support one another in the resolution. We, whatever it is, but it's, even if it's not currently happening, you put it in the present tense. And when each person makes the list of statements separately, then you can come together and share them. And the reason for doing it that way is you come up with things on your own that you might
Yeah.
not come up with if you're doing it with your partner. But then you get to see, oh, I love that he put that there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, honey, that was so great. And then I recommend anything you disagree with to just leave it off, because this is not a comprehensive statement.
Right.
It's
Right.
not like a contract covering all, it's not like a constitution that covers all
Right.
possible scenarios. It is like a North Star to guide the relationship,
Yeah.
and to then come up with all of the statements. And this is so beautiful because it means even when you disagree or you don't see eye to eye, you know you both have the same intention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's wonderful to think of the vision as a living document. And so on your anniversary, review it, see if you want to make any changes, any additions.
Yeah.
I have one couple that is extremely entrepreneurial, and they live very much in an entrepreneurial mindset. And they go away for the weekend quarterly and review their relationship vision and see if there's anything they want to adjust the way they might in running a business.
Well, that's pretty dreamy. That's dreamy to my ears right now. And I love what you said, right? Because, you're saying the same thing now that you were saying just a few moments ago when you're talking about revealing, which again is being responsible for self, being 100% in for what is it that I really want in my life, and then bringing that to the table rather than like trying to negotiate the maybes and the what ifs before being really clear for yourself. So I thank you so very much for being a part of this conversation with me and sharing so much about your own life story. I think it's really valuable. And I appreciate that, because I think that so many of us, we don't have windows into other people's life stories, right? I mean, sex and relationship is an area where there's still a lot of taboo, even though we live in a highly sexualized culture. And so I just really want to thank you and appreciate you for sharing some of those juicy details so that we can all move forward and be that fully expressed and be as ecstatic about our dishes as we are about our intimacy. Thank you,
Thank you
Alexandra.
so much for saying that. I'm really glad to. And, I probably would tell more stories about clients, but this is not a realm to necessarily do that. So I learned to reveal myself to my husband, and I have, in service of exactly what you just said, learned to reveal myself.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. I'm so happy you're doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.